being black, going crazy. Why are you 17 times more likely to be diagnosed with a serious mental health condition if you are a black man in Britain, and 6 times more likely than a white man to be an inpatient in a mental health unit? So let's see if we can answer that. So I'm going to ask you a common sense question now. Why do you think this is happening? Why do you think black people are more susceptible to black mental and emotional health issues? Anyone?
White supremacy.
White supremacy. Racism. Interesting. So two answers. One said white supremacy, one said racism. Show of hands. Who thinks they understand what racism is? Show of hands. Okay, that's interesting. Alright, show of hands. Who believes that in 2019 there is such a thing as a white racist living in the UK today? Show of hands. Okay, that's not everyone. That's just over half. Interesting. Okay, show of hands. Who believes that there's such a thing as a black racist living in the UK today? Show of hands. Okay. Alright. Well, let's do it like this. The people who believe that there's such a thing as a white racist living in the UK today, list all the ways in which white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people as a group today. Education.
Media. Criminal justice system.
It's got everything.
I'm just going by what I heard. So media. I heard health.
Language.
Jobs.
History.
Housing. Violence. I heard health and nutrition.
History.
Oh yes, politics.
Finance.
Okay, politics.
High mortality.
Finance.
Stress.
Mortality, stress.
Mental health.
Mortality, stress. Okay, I've run out of space. Okay. Alright. For those of you who said there are such a thing as black racists living in the UK, list all the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as a group today. Are you confused by the question? For those of you who believe that there is such a thing as a black racist, list all the ways, you know, like how we did here, list all the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as a group. Feelings. As a group. And then when it comes to this environment, people say media and that sort of stuff. The media has certain stereotypes when it comes to black people. But there are people that will say, don't blame the media. It's not just the media's fault. And they talked about that as well.
Juwanza, is it the fault of the media?
Well, there's no question that there's a direct relationship between images and self-esteem. And it goes all the way back to Tarzan, to Superman, to Rambo, to Batman, to even painting the image of Jesus Christ as white. I mean, you can't separate racism from anything. So it's not unlikely then that you have Pope Julius commissioning Michelangelo in 1505 to paint Jesus Christ white. Images control self-esteem. Abraham Lincoln found out very early, when you have 300 slaves on a plantation and one master, it takes a lot of work. Why don't you let them go? But don't teach them who they are. Control their history. Control their images. Then you won't have to watch it. Whoever controls the mind will also control the body.
You agree with that? Whoever controls the mind will also control the body. That reminds me of a quote by Carter G. Woodson, who wrote the book, The Miseducation of the Negro. He says, if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. Now, how do you control someone's thinking? What's the best way to control what someone thinks? Control what they see. Because what you see is all there is. That's going to affect how you think. So if I can control what you see, I can control what you think. And if I can control what you think, I don't need to worry about what you do. Your behavior becomes extremely predictable, because what you see is all there is. Now, speaking of what you see is all there is, what do we see? Well, this sort of stuff. London stabbings fuel UK's worst day of the year for knife crime as blade offences reach all-time high. That's this year, 2019, April. So it's an all-time high this year. But what's the truth? Would you like to know the truth about knife crime? Find out the truth? Let's see what the truth is. Now, is this the truth? Because a lot of people will look at this and think this is a bad person. They're probably carrying a knife. They're probably armed and dangerous. But what is the truth? Again, when it comes to speaking the truth to power, I don't think there's anyone better than this.
This is predominantly a problem of young black teenage boys who are members almost exclusively of gangs attacking each other, so that the perpetrators and the victims appear to be almost exclusively young black men.
Okay, so there are several regions of the country, let's just look at the facts, that have higher murder rates than London does. Clearly, throughout human history, black people have not had anything remotely resembling a monopoly on violence. Over the last few years, some of the most horrendous knife attacks, both the victims and the perpetrators, have been white, and they've not been from London, including a 13-year-old girl stabbed to death in Southampton, a 16-year-old stabbed to death in Dinnington, a 7-year-old girl stabbed to death in York, a 5-year-old stabbed to death by his own mother in Oxfordshire. When both the perpetrator and the victims are white, race suddenly becomes unimportant. In the last 2 years, it's still important to remember that the overwhelming majority of murders have not been committed by teenage black boys. So, for example, in 2017, there were 117 or 16 murders, 21 of which were of teenage black boys. In 2018, there were 134, 24 were of teenagers in general. So it's also
so the stats can be twisted any way you like.
Precisely.
I hope you all got that. Yeah? And does anyone know who this is? Yeah, he's been going around taking knives off the streets, knives off of the youth. But he was on Sky News recently, and he said that 70% of people who give me knives are white. So again, they made us think like it's us, when really, if you look at the percentages wise, it's not entirely true. This is from Metro, this was earlier this year. They talk about the number of fatal stabbings is at its highest level since records began more than 70 years ago. Look at what it says here. Figures from the Office for National Statistics, remember that same office that says that it doesn't record the ethnicity of people who commit suicide, that office also show a quarter of last year's victims were black, the highest proportion since fatal stabbing data were first collected in 97. A quarter were black. Now science is simple, it's just 2 plus 2. So someone give me what a quarter is as a percentage. 25, what's left over? 75. That means the majority of knife incidents from this year and last year were not black. But what do they focus on? The black. Because what you see is all there is. Now with that being said, the truth is 25%, not 75%, but 25% is young black youths killing each other, which is still a super high number. Just the fact that it's not 75 shouldn't mean that it's a good thing. It's still a super high number, 25%. So we need to ask the logical question, what's happening in London? Why the rise in knife crime? Now it's funny when you ask logical questions, I truly believe if you're a truth seeker, and I've done this with my own observations, the truth tends to gravitate towards those who seek it genuinely. So if you genuinely want to know the truth, it will come to you. It might come to you in the form of a video on YouTube. It might come to you in the form of a teacher. You know what they say? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So if you're really seeking the truth, it comes to you. So I asked this question a couple of years ago, like, what's going on in London? Why the rise in knife crime? And an answer came to me through a YouTube video. Now, I'm going to show you this YouTube video, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But listen to what this person said. And they weren't a scholar, they weren't a lecturer, they weren't a psychologist, they weren't someone who's part of the government or the media. Look where the quote-unquote answer came from.
When I was young, I realized I need to have a purpose, whether it be me trying to enlighten other people's lives through my music or tell my story, or whether it be to try to provide for my family and make them proud, I need to have a purpose. A lot of young people right now don't have a purpose, and we could sit here all day and say, yes, what is the rise? We know what the rise is. We've got a crap-ass government. They don't give a crap about what's going on. You're saying a rise in knife crime, but yet we're ignoring the factors of why this is actually happening. This is a punishment from the government. This is actually like, all right, cool.
Like the cuts.
This is a direct punishment. You think out of nowhere, hundreds of kids are just dying on the street, out of nowhere, just by a blink of an eye. We had a riot worldwide. The country was embarrassed. All of a sudden, these urban kids have disturbed what Great Britain looks like. Oh God, the Queen's gonna fall off her throne. How could they be rioting and going all the way up to Westminster almost? It was an embarrassment for the country. So the government said, you know what? All these urban pieces of scum, they're going to suffer now. We're not investing back in your communities. There's no EMA to send these kids to college. There's no universities for them to get into. So when we're saying, oh, why is there knife crime? If you don't value your own life and your life's not being valued, what are you going to do? You're just going to go out here and be an animal. Now, and that's literally what's going on.
All right, now, at the beginning I asked you these questions. The first question was, what's more important, the truth or your opinion? You guys said the truth, the majority of you. The second question was, if your opinion matches the truth, what should happen to your opinion? You guys said it makes it a fact, it strengthens it. The next question was, if it doesn't match the truth, what should happen to your opinion? You guys said you should change your opinion if it doesn't match the truth. Question 4 was, should we focus on the cause of the problem or the effects? Most of you said the cause. And then the last question was, would you allow your child to sit someone else's maths exam? You guys said no, and here were the reasons. Because it's immoral. Because it will apply pressure on your child to sit someone else's maths exam. It's not the intelligent thing to do. Your child will not get any credit. There's no benefit in solving other people's problems. And if you continue to solve other people's problems, then all of a sudden that will start making you think like it's the norm. That's what you guys said. It's the norm. And I put here, the more you live in an abnormal environment, the more you'll start thinking it's normal. It is abnormal for you to solve someone else's problems when you've got your own. That is abnormal. As a child or as an adult. If this is not your priority, then who's going to solve these problems? Superman? Batman? Black Panther? Who's going to solve these problems? Because this is what, according to the evidence and your opinion, this is what our children are going to be born into. These are our problems. Alright, so with that being said now, first question was, what's more important, the truth or your opinion? You guys said the truth. So when I watched this video, I was like, bruh, that's quite provocative what he's saying. But is it true? Yes. Now, science is simple. It's logic backed up by... So what do I need to show you? So what happened in 2011? Well, he says 2011 there was a rise. And since 2011, look what's happened. London Youth Service budget cuts. Cut. The cuts have just been going up. This is millions, you know. This is how many millions they've been cutting out of the London Youth Services since 2011. What about cuts to youth workers? Up. For those who want the source is there. London's Youth Services, Green Party, BBC. And then cuts to youth centres, dropping youth centre provision. So cuts to youth centres. When I was growing up, there was youth centres all around, and now it's hard to find a youth centre. Yeah? But check this out. This came out this year. Look at the date, 7th of May 2019. Rising knife crime linked to council cuts, study says. So they're starting to do scientific research, and they're starting to find out that the rise in knife crime is due to the cuts. Knife crime rise linked to youth service cuts. This was again this year, May. And look at this, knife crime linked to cuts. Like all the newspapers ran with this story. This is what come out. And remember, they're doing studies, so they're trying to figure out, Rod, you know what, the knife crime stuff, there's a correlation between the knife crime and the cuts to youth services. So that means the more they've been cutting the youth services, the more the children have been cutting each other on the road. Yeah? The irony. But this is in hindsight, is it not? This is after the fact. Like, oh my gosh, maybe the government was like, wow, all of those cuts led to more knife crime. Because it's after the fact now. Like, knife crime is at a super high in 2019. So maybe they didn't know. Look at this, even the police ran with the story. Youth budget cuts linked to rise in knife crime. Police, this is a police website. Again in May. But what if I told you they did know? Look at this. This is from 8 years ago, 2011. This is from 8 years ago, The Guardian. Knife crime and gang violence on the rise as councils reduce youth services. Gang crime is on the rise after what some experts, including Children's Minister, call disproportionate cuts to youth services. Again, this is in 2011. It goes on to say in this article, UK cities should brace themselves. Wait, what year? This was July 2011. July 2011, look what it says. UK cities should brace themselves for a summer of gang and knife violence as the impact of cuts on youth services takes hold. Experts are warning. Youth violence is already increasing in London. Figures given to The Guardian reveal that serious youth violence increased by 4% year on across the capital with a 9.6 hike in knife crime. There are fears that deep reductions in youth service budgets, particularly to programs that divert inner city youths away from gangs and knife crime, could have a devastating impact on crime levels. Now, what we need to understand about the government, they use intelligence. So we talked about intelligence a lot. They use intelligence. They get experts to predict what's going to happen in the environment. If we do this, what will happen? If we do that, what will happen? So here's one of their experts, Professor John Pitts, an advisor to several local authorities in London on gangs and violent crime, issued a stark warning. Again, this is July 2011, to the government last week about the risks involved when closing services for young people. He said, now listen to this, if you cut summer activities for young people, as night follows day, you will see an increase in crime. My anxiety is that those gang members who were in school will now be on the streets. Coupled with cuts to the services they use and fewer youth workers who can mediate, those streets will be a lot more dangerous, and I would expect the level of crime and violence to rise. And what happened? Since 2011, they've been doing cuts. So you're trying to tell me they were warned before they started to do the cuts, it's going to lead to more knife crime. It's going to lead to more gang violence. It's going to lead to young children getting killed on the streets. And they were given intelligence. In other words, they employed people to say, if we do this, what will happen? Well, if you cut the budgets, then it's going to lead to more knife crime. And the government said, after getting that stark warning, the government got the stark warning that if you cut the budgets, it's going to lead to more knife crime, especially in the inner cities, black children. The government said it's going to lead to what? Cut. So everything got cut. And when we talk about youth centres, when a youth centre gets cut, we need to understand how that affects the young people. And instead of me telling you how it affects it, listen to their own voices. This is from the horse's mouth. Again, this is July 2011. Listen to how the youth were talking about how their youth centre got cut. July 2011.
Yeah. I used to go to a couple youth clubs, and obviously there was somewhere for us to go and that. Get me? And now there's nothing to do now. Like, we're just out there, we're just getting up to no good. Like, people are intimidated by us. Like, there's nothing to do. If all my friends was here, you would see the type of behaviour I'm talking about.
When the streets are in London, it's rough. You've got a lot of gangs, knife crime, all that.
When they did close their youth centres down, they didn't even alert the young people. So it was like one day the youth centre was there, and then the next day it was gone.
But it's another thing, when youth clubs and get shut down, it cuts kids' roots off and links. They don't really have anywhere to go.
Like, when I'm with all my friends and we all got hoodies and that type of youth, nobody wants to be around us, and the youth club was just a place that we could all go and have fun. Like, at least we got somewhere to go. Now look, we walk down the streets and we're getting pulled over by police. Like, there's nothing here for us. Like, the youth club's activities, there's so much stuff to do. We can make music, we could do videos. You get me?
They just want to find something to do now, especially now school's out.
summertime.
They're not necessarily turning to the streets like to do bad things, but they'll just be jamming like outside McDonald's or outside the train stations. They'll just be jamming, and then another group of boys will come, they'll spot you, they'll start screwing each other, start giving them the looks, and then next thing you knew, a fight will kick out.
I would say I've had a couple friends that's been stabbed, one that's been shot, but not severely injured, thank God.
I know of quite a few gangs in the areas around Tottenham and Wood Green and Enfield and Edmonton. They're building up rapidly. But everyone knows what happens on the streets. Like, people are getting stabbed these days over postcodes that we don't even rule. It's the government's. Like, dumb stuff like that. People are just getting stabbed up. People are getting robbed. People are getting their house burgled, and bare stuff are going on right now. Bare stuff is crazy. But when they done that youth club stuff, it was just like a place where everyone could go, like, and just get each other, just get people off the streets, like, have them doing something better than being on the roads robbing and that. Like, you get me?
Knife crime, you get a lot of gun crime and certain things like that over nothing major.
Postcode wars. So if another person comes to their postcode or they see another people in these areas that they believe are there, they want to ask them why they're here, and they might try to fight them.
If it's not a knife, it's also a metal bat. They use metal bats as well, and then that actually does really bad damage.
If you're in a gang, you sort of have that security around you, that like you've got your friends to protect you and back you up. But then, like, if more people are joining gangs, then it becomes more dangerous for people that aren't in gangs.
Living in a certain place where this is a big thing, you might just not necessarily want to join it, but maybe just feel peer pressure. Friends are in it. Maybe just think, oh, I might as well. Everyone else seems to be in it. I feel like an outsider, I suppose. And when you're in it, it's kind of hard to like remove yourself from it. Like, everybody used to go youth clubs. It's not even like they made youth club and no one used to go. People used to go youth club every day.
Young people around here, they're influenced by what they see, especially by media, TV, rap music, or any type of music that's promoting gun crime.
Some gang members do go to the youth club and they are off the streets. It's not a whole day thing, so obviously there'll be time when it shuts and then they'll be free to roam the streets, I suppose. There'll always be that.
I think it's going to be swarming. I think people are going to be trying to find things to do. People are going to want jobs, and that's going to be frustrating. You know, you've got a lot of people out here.
I'm looking for a job myself. I ain't got one myself. A lot of people, they don't have a lot of money. Some of them come from poorer backgrounds, and so they look to cause trouble, have fun, maybe take things off other people because they haven't got them themselves.
That's why there's more crime on the road, because there's nothing to do.
They're always going to be troublemakers, but it's just keeping that number as low as it can be.
They ain't got a destination where they can say, yeah, this is mine, and this is where I can come.
It is a sad story that the cuts are affecting young people a lot, but like the government doesn't realise what they're doing to us.
What's the point of stopping youth clubs? Why did they do that? I don't know. Why did they do that anyway?
It wasn't going to be a riot. It'd be riots. It'd be riots. It wasn't going to be a riot. It'd be riots.
It'd be riots.
It wasn't going to be a riot. It'd be riots. It'd be riots.
Did you hear what he said?
Yeah.
What did he say? There's going to be riots. When was this video taken? July 2011. Now I have a question for everyone in here. What happened the following month?
It was on Monday the 8th of August 2011 that Britain's superstructure collapsed. By midnight, it was clear that the police and the government had lost control. For one night at least, delinquent anarchy had proved more powerful than fellowship and bureaucracy. On Monday afternoon, with shops boarded up, it was clear that all London needed to explode was a spark. And this was it. At the narrows at the end of Mayor Street in Hackney, 3 police vans swerved to a stop. About 10 policemen rushed 2 men. A crowd quickly formed, exciting themselves and freaking out the police. Soon there were 2 groups and bricks were being thrown. A gridlock of cop cars and rioters grew beneath the bridge, and soon there was a running battle up Mare Street. The crowd was split into two, half of whom were chased up Morning Lane, where they broke into Tesco's. "Missile up," they shouted, while pulling out Coke cans and bottled water and charging towards the cops.
Just grab some missiles, bro! Grab some missiles!
No, we're not moving back. Stay alive! Stay alive! Stop it! I'm coming all that time there. Don't move!
The rest of the crowd were moved up Mare Street, and that's when everything started to go crazy.
Let's remember what he said.
So you think out of nowhere, hundreds of kids are just dying on the street, out of nowhere, just by a blink of an eye?
We had a riot worldwide. The country was embarrassed.
All of a sudden, these urban kids have disturbed what Great Britain looks like. Oh God, the Queen's gonna fall off her throne. How could they be rioting and going all the way up to Westminster almost? It was an embarrassment for the country. So the government said, you know what? All these urban pieces of scum,
They're going to suffer now. We're not investing back in your communities. You're not going to have anything. Everything's getting cut.
Everything's getting cut. Everything's getting cut.
Since then, everything's been getting cut. Everything's been getting cut. Everything's been getting cut. I remember they had intelligence to know that if they cut the budget to youth services, it would lead to more knife crime on the streets. Don't do that. It's going to lead to more knife crime. It's going to lead to what? More knife crime, especially in the inner cities where, you know, black children. It's going to lead to more young black boys dying. Oh, really? They knew this before. And trust me, if you remember back in 2011, the government was going crazy. They were trying to figure out, how do we let this happen? Because, make no mistake, for 4 days, these young urban youths turned UK upside down. So the government wanted to know, how did we let this happen? How did we let this happen? And they got their intelligence to do some research around 2011, and they wanted to know, how did the children, because it was children at the end of the day doing the quote-unquote riots, how did the children do this? Because remember, they were communicating with each other in like London, Birmingham, Manchester. They were like, how did they do this? How did they get around police intelligence and orchestrate all of this madness? And they came up with one answer. Do you know what that one answer was?
Blackberry.
Blackberry. Blackberry. Who remembers Blackberry? Blackberry was the most popular phone in 2011. Yeah? But because it was associated with the London riots, how Blackberry, this was 8 years ago, how Blackberry Messenger played a key role. Police looking on Facebook and Twitter for signs of unrest spreading will have missed out. They should have watched BBM. London riots, police to track rioters who use BlackBerry Messenger. Look at this. They said, instead of looking at Twitter and Facebook, the most powerful and up-to-the-minute rallying appears to have taken place on a more covert social network, BBM, BlackBerry Messenger. Remember, we was all on this. Ping, 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 ping. Everyone was pinging each other. Using BlackBerry handsets, the smartphone of choice for the majority of British teens, BBM allows users to send one-to-many messages to their network of contacts who are connected by BBM pins. For many teens armed with a BlackBerry, BBM has replaced text messaging because it is free, instant, and more part of a much larger community. Unlike Twitter or Facebook, many BBM messages are untraceable by the authorities. Now, when this happened and the authorities found out, they went to BlackBerry and said, we want all the information that you've got on your phones. Police investigating those responsible for the London riots will be able to track down and arrest them based on their BlackBerry Messenger communication with others who took part. BlackBerry owners using the private social network to message each other and plan unrest could find their personal information, including their names and those of their contacts, handed over to police as part of the investigation. So the police came to BlackBerry and said, hey, these people are using BlackBerries to communicate with each other. Can we get their details? Can we get their information as part of an investigation, a police investigation? So BlackBerry said, cool, because we're innocent in this. They were just using our devices here and handed over all of the information. So all of the pings, all of the messages that they were sending to each other. So BlackBerry Maker Research in Motion on Monday vowed to cooperate with the Scotland Yard inquiry following claims that BlackBerry Messenger played a key role. Now, during this time, the government wanted to shut them down. And the person who was leading that, I hate to do this, but you got to speak truth to power. The person who was leading that was David Lammy. The MP from Tottenham on Tuesday appealed for the Canadian manufacturer to shut down BlackBerry Messenger in an attempt to stem further unrest. Information about those sending messages about London riots on the covert social network, which is only available to BlackBerry owners, will be of great interest to police. 3 teenagers were arrested on suspicion of inciting riots. So what did David Lammy say? Lammy said, BlackBerry Messenger was one of the reasons why. Check out, when people talk, we need to listen to the language, yeah? Listen to this. Again, this was 2011, so maybe he's changed the way he talks, but listen to this. Lammy said BlackBerry Messenger was one of the reasons why unsophisticated criminals are outfoxing an otherwise sophisticated police force. In other words, you know, they're unsophisticated, they're dumb, but if they're dumb, how come the police didn't, you know? So it must be because of the BlackBerry, yeah? And then other people started to jump on it. Other MPs were saying, hey, BlackBerry needs to get shut down. It's unbelievable, BlackBerry Messenger hasn't been shut down. BlackBerry Messenger, BlackBerry, as a company, they're an innocent company in this. They're an innocent bystander, yeah? But what happened? Because of all of this pressure on BlackBerry, guess what the government did to BlackBerry as a company?
Shut them down.
Look at this. BlackBerry smartphone sales by year. In 2011, BlackBerry was selling over 55 million devices. They were more popular than iPhones, Samsungs, or whatever other phone. They were the most popular phone in 2011. And after 2011, the government said, cut. Why? Because these unsophisticated criminals were using BlackBerry. This is how the moonwalking bear carries on. You're going to shut down a whole company simply because that company, unsophisticated criminals, were using it to orchestrate a riot. They literally shut down BlackBerry. Now, why would they shut down BlackBerry, the company? Because
this is a punishment.
Because it's a punishment. And look at this. Even when the riots were going on, they wanted to make sure everyone who rioted got punished. So I don't know if you remember, police launched a name and shame gallery. Now, the name and shame, they put it all online, but remember it was children. And the person who was leading this was Theresa May. So juveniles involved in last week's riots and looting faced being named and shamed after the Home Secretary said that the courts should not protect their identity. Now remember, it was children rioting. And under the law, your identity should be protected. And Theresa May said, cut, name and shame. Let's put them out there. And why? So they put this out there, they started putting out all of these images, but they had to stop it when they realized it weren't just urban youths that were writing. Middle class writers revealed, the millionaire's daughter, the aspiring musician. So they had to put a hold on it, yeah? But that's the truth about knife crime. The government knew that cutting youth services would lead to more knife crime, and they did it anyway. Yes, brother?
I think it's so fascinating because it goes back to what you mentioned as the problems on the board. So when you look at what actually caused it, it's to do with feelings.
Exactly.
They felt embarrassed.
Exactly. Exactly. Big up. Big up. That's exactly it. Their feelings were hurt after the riots. Their feelings were hurt after the riots, so, you know, they had to do something about it. But that just shows you. We go through all of this, and most of us suppress it. We might talk about it every, I don't know, couple of decades, we might riot. But other than that, no one's talking about the moonwalking bear, because half of us couldn't even see it. We don't even know it exists. Or we know it exists, but we're not going to do anything about it. But these are our problems, according to you lot, these are our problems. And again, if you wouldn't allow your child to sit someone else's matters out, in other words, solve someone else's problems, then why are we not solving our own? Yeah? So with us, if we go through this, we might suppress it, get depressed, anxiety, that sort of stuff. But if you hurt their feelings,